Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit the subscribe button. There you go, right down there. If you want to be among the first to hear my weekly takes, NFL, college football, more, right there. One of the things, I wrote this, I think, in my first book. 2 things make smart men stupid: beautiful women and sports. And I always think, so I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, where I was a Husky fan as a kid, but we didn't have teams that won a lot of championships. And ever since I was a kid, I've always wanted to be a sportscaster. So I was never a true fan as a kid. You know, people know I like the Huskies or USC, but I'm not really a true fan. I love creating content. And anybody that knows me, you know me, Jamie Horowitz, Charlie Dixon. I love to create content. That's my love of my life. Beyond my kids and family, I love to create 7-minute rants, 8-minute rants, and I love the audience to rip them, enjoy them, whatever.
Yep.
And this Jim Harbaugh stuff is why I, as a moderately bright guy, have a great career. Is that Jim Harbaugh has literally won everywhere. He got to a Super Bowl with Kaepernick. He won at academically rigid Stanford, like 12 games. He won 10 games at Michigan the first year with Brady Hoax players in the Big Ten. And for years, people just kept pushing back. He's not good. And I tell people, it's called Google. It's a search engine. You can look at his brother's brilliant. His dad won a championship. His brother's brilliant. He's won everywhere. And it was the reluctance for people because Jim makes people, he's a disruptor, uncomfortable. He's Uber to taxi. He just pisses people off. He's new. We've done it this way. He does it that way. The Jim Schwartz pat in the back. He's hard. He pissed Pete Carroll off. And the idea that Jim Harbaugh needed the Natty to be viewed as a great coach. And I'm like, Saban bombed in the NFL. Spurrier bombed. Like there's 4 or 5 guys ever, Jimmy Johnson, Pete Carroll, Jim Harbaugh, that won with both. It's really hard. I mean, Belichick, he wouldn't deal with donors. He wouldn't recruit. He's shown no ability to understand offense. That in our business, that if we allow the fans to be the jury, and then, you know, somebody can be the DA, somebody can be the prosecuting attorney, and you and I are just the judge, and you remove emotion from most of the arguments, it is rather bizarre.
Simple. Well, yeah, for sure.
How often greatness is obvious, and people, because their agendas or their connections to other schools, just won't subscribe to, Jim Harbaugh's won everywhere immediately.
Everywhere.
I'm shocked by all the people that are like,
that needed this to prove it. They needed it to prove it. Now, listen, I will admit, like, you know, it's not like we don't all have our own whiffs. I just mentioned the Jokic thing. So, like, it's not like anybody bats 1,000 on this stuff. But
No, I'm not saying that. Jokic, by the way, was an ascending player who's a second rounder.
And it just, there was no precedent for it, which is part of what makes him so special when you're unprecedented. But, and also to add to your point, and I might be totally misremembering, but like a decade ago, didn't you have a really weird like thing with Harbaugh?
Yes.
Like I don't know if that was it. Right. But you like there was an interview or whatever where it seemed like he was giving you the hard time. I don't remember the details of it.
Yeah. Okay. So I did an interview. It was terribly clunky. I could have easily turned on him. But
that's what I was going to bring it up. Was I thought somewhere in my brain, I thought that existed, but I couldn't quite remember it. Nothing would have been easier than to be like, everybody thinks this guy's a dope. He kind of was a dick to me when I talked to him. And it's always the safer bet to say someone sucks because it's hard to win. Because you're going to get to be right so much more often than you're going to ever be wrong, because there's only one winner at the end of the day. And if you can be like, well, can't win the big game. I mean, what do you want me to tell you? Like I told you, the guy sucks. And I watch 10% as much college football as you, but I watch the biggest games, the biggest programs, and I obviously am very aware of what's going on. And it was like 6 years ago. I'm like, wasn't Harbaugh's team with way less talent like a bad spot away from beating Ohio State?
Yes.
Like, hasn't so much of this narrative of, oh, can't beat the best teams. Like, aren't we basing that partially on a spot we all agree was the wrong spot in a year he would have either been undefeated or in the title game? I don't remember all the details, but there's just so much data. I'll give you a different contemporary example. It should not have taken Patrick Mahomes for people to realize Andy Reid, pretty fucking smart.
Yeah.
You know what? And by the way, he would have probably never won a Super Bowl. You know what I mean? If it would have just been Alex Smith to the next guy, because winning Super Bowls are hard. But when every player, every quarterback that you have has their best seasons under you.
Yes.
And then it's like, oh, like it's so all the, and I think, by the way, kind of a future take, I can see some of the media turning on is too strong, but starting to do this topic. How good is Kyle Shanahan really? If they don't make, because it's like, oh, these great regular seasons, but where's the jewelry? Like if they don't win the Super Bowl, as opposed to being like, well, I don't know. He's taking quarterbacks that the moment they leave him are backups or benched or whatever, and won 12 games, 13 games, won playoff games, probably pretty good. And so I do think there is a level of folks that I think will only go with what they truly believe
and see.
Yeah, up until it's like, this is not in the mainstream enough anymore. I'll just agree with everybody else. And I think that's why, not to bring up the Niners again, I think that's why people have gotten so frustrated with me on Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
It's because so many of the other skeptics laid down their swords, and I don't think they were convinced. I just think they got sick of getting yelled at. And what I think folks don't know is, in order to yell at me, you better see me in person, because I'm not seeing any of it. I'm not reading any of it. Like, the only people who get to yell at me are Broussard, Wilds, you, and people I know. So, like, it doesn't impact me. And so the Harbaugh thing is fascinating. And I do wonder how much of it is they just didn't like it. They just thought the guy was weird and a jerk or whatever. And I don't want to ascribe that to him because I don't know him, but it seemed like a lot of it was like, I don't like this guy.
Yeah, I had 4, I rely a lot because I'm older. So I know a lot of coaches and executives. I go to lunch with them. I have dinner with them. So I know 4 different coaches who have been on Harbaugh's staff. And they all said the same thing. Guy is different. He's the most football obsessed guy ever. It's insane. So a lot of times I have access, you do, that fans don't, right? They don't.
Sure.
They don't have these. I mean, I go to dinner probably twice a year with Mangini. We talk about shit that I'm not putting on the air. Jed Fish is a good friend of mine. Different guys I've dealt with. So I do have some, I can call
part of the job. Yeah, of course.
Right, this is what we do. If you're a mortgage broker listening to me, you have access to stuff that I don't have. So, but I just found the Harbaugh stuff. It's like, guys, 4 times, including the NFL. First year, he took the Niners over. They were excellent. And it's like, a lot of people get jobs and they don't last. But if you get 4 different jobs, 5 different jobs, you take crap and you make it good immediately, and you're successful in all of them. I don't need championships. Now,
and where was he before Stanford? I don't even remember. I shouldn't say that.
So he was at San Diego. It was a small university.
Where it was. Yeah. And he succeeded there, and he succeeded everywhere.
They had a quarterback who was good. He made him really, really good. Then he went to Stanford. Stanford was the worst program in the country with high academic standards.
And they beat USC.
As a 40-point dog in the Coliseum.
I remember that vividly. I remember it. And in my opinion, set the table. And this is the other thing that happens sometimes to guys. Are you pals with Chris Peterson? Maybe I'm making.
Oh, yes. Up. Yeah. I have him on the phone. Yeah.
Okay. So I feel like sometimes guys become victims of their own success.
Yeah.
Where they make a play so relevant or good that it stays that after they leave. And then to some folks, it's not as wildly impressive of what they did when they got there. So Chris Peterson like turned Boise State into such a power that after he leaves, it's still relevant. And it's like, no. That was created by him. Similar thing happened with Harbaugh with Stanford. Like Harbaugh can leave. They have Andrew Luck and David Shaw, and they're really good still. And it's like, oh yeah, Stanford's always pretty good. It's like, no, it was not. Like
Terrible.
that is I mean, I understand there were times when it was, and they were involved in famous games, obviously. But when he took it over, it was terrible and made it great. And the Niners were in the wilderness, and it instantly turned around. It instantly turned around for them. Which, if you were advising him, what job would you if he had his pick of all the NFL openings, what job would you tell him?
I would say, Jim, you recruited Drake May. Do you think he's better than Justin Herbert? And if the answer is yes, you take the Washington job, because Herbert for the next rest of his career is expensive. If you believe that Drake May is better than Justin Herbert, you take the Washington job. Your brother coaches Baltimore. You take Washington. Your mom and dad can move between the two of you.
That's pretty
cap
cool.
space, good roster, Drake May. Now,
rich owner.
If you don't think it is, then just go with the best quarterback. I mean, the answer in the NFL is almost always go where the best quarterback is or draft the best quarterback. Chicago, draft Caleb Williams. It'll just work out. It'll work out.
Of course.
Right. So the Charger job, unless and wherever Harbaugh goes, what's really an advantage is like Pete Carroll or Jimmy Johnson. When they're in college and they come to pro, you get about a 3-year window where you know all the college players. You recruited all of them.
Oh, that's a good point.
Huge edge. So the rebuild will be much easier for you. Now, the Chargers is not a rebuild. They have cap space, cap issues. Washington's not a total rebuild, but a semi-rebuild with tons of cap space. So Harbaugh can walk in and go, yeah, I'm going to, like Jimmy and Pete, the rebuild is much easier for me. I know all. And by the way, we will trade off some players, get draft picks. I'll probably take 4 of my Michigan guys who I know can play, and I'll avoid the ones that I know can't.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you go look at Pete Carroll's first 3 or 4 drafts out of USC. I mean, it was just 5th round, 6th round. I mean, he was nailing people.